The Cold War was a 4.5-decade-long bluff between the Soviet Union and the United States. The reason it's called the Cold War is because it never went hot, meaning nothing happened. No battles, no explosions, no conflict, no war. But there have been instances where it seemed war was inevitable. The Cuban Missile Crisis. This 15-day-long standoff between the Soviet Union and the United States was the closest we've ever been to all-out nuclear war. Well, that was until some fat Korean kid came around, but we're not talking about him, are we? The invasion of the Bay of Pigs was a failed operation conducted by the U.S. to invade the small island nation of Cuba. This operation was to overthrow the communist government led by the communist leader Fidel Castro. Since America at the time had a major boner for stopping the spread of communism, having a communist leader less than 90 miles from the shores of freedom itself was a big no-no. But after that failed invasion, Fidel Castro, who wasn't part of the Soviet Union at the time, joined the Soviet bloc in retaliation to the failed invasion. Russia, in fear that the Americans would try to invade Cuba again, Nikita Khrushchev, leader of the Soviet Union at the time, sent short to medium-range nuclear missiles to the small island nation as a defensive maneuver in an attempt to send a message to the Americans: do not invade Cuba. While building the missile sites and nuclear warheads themselves, an American spy plane saw what the Russians were doing. The missiles, again, were only meant for defensive maneuvers, but the Pentagon and the White House perceived them as offensive. After the missiles were discovered, Kennedy issued the public with a speech telling them that the missiles were offensive and the Soviets were going to try to blow up the U.S. The public actually took the news pretty well, only resulting in a few families moving out of the D.C. area. So in an attempt to stop the delivery of more nuclear missiles, the U.S. put a blockade, or quarantine, as Kennedy liked to call it, of ships and vessels around Cuba. Khrushchev, not wanting to start a conflict, told the ships carrying the warheads to turn around and head back to Russia. Although some ships went through the blockade, none of them were carrying nuclear weapons. Tensions got higher when an American spy plane was shot down over the island of Cuba, in which the pilot, 35-year-old Rudolph Anderson Jr., was instantly killed. News reached the cabinet in a matter of hours. During the conflict, Nikita Khrushchev and John F. Kennedy exchanged letters and had communicated in secret, during which Fidel Castro, the leader of Cuba, and Nikita Khrushchev were also secretly communicating with each other. Kennedy's cabinet members and military strategists told him to strike back at the Soviets. Kennedy knew that if he struck at the Soviets, that it would be it. If he fired those missiles, the U.S. would have officially started World War III. But being calm and level-headed, Kennedy disagreed with his team's advice and decided to not attack the Soviets, knowing Khrushchev did not give the orders to shoot down the plane. For Kennedy and Khrushchev, this loss of life had them both realize that the crisis was getting out of hand. Robert Kennedy, Attorney General and John F. Kennedy's brother, agreed to meet Soviet Ambassador Anatoly Dobrynin to discuss terms and end the standoff. The Soviet Union agreed to pull the missiles out of Cuba, while the Americans agreed to never try to invade Cuba and to dismantle the Jupiter missiles in Turkey and Italy that they had placed to potentially strike the Soviet Union. In 1963, a phone line was set up in the White House and Kremlin in order to directly contact both leaders in case of another emergency. There was public backlash in the States when it was revealed to the public that Kennedy was talking with Khrushchev, with many people calling him a traitor to America. Cuban and Russian relations were also damaged when Castro found out about the secret communication between Kennedy and Khrushchev. There was also one lesson America learned after those 13 days of tension: never trust a goddamn commie.